at 7 p.m. and I got it. So are there any adjustments to the agenda which was sent out by Catherine earlier? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to welcome, introductions, opening remarks. First, I'd like to make sure I welcome Dr. Rakeley, who is joining us again. And then I'll also ask if we can have the group introduce themselves. I'll use the list of participants that I have here to call your name, and then you can introduce yourself. Richard?
Yeah, up here in Highgate, the frozen north.
All right. Yvonne?
Yvonne Danduran, Town of Franklin.
Rowena?
Rowena Brown, Town of Richford.
Thank you. Brian?
Brian, excuse me, Brian Doobie, Fairfield.
Yes, sir. Lynn?
Douglas Fletcher.
Thank you, Lynn. Colleen?
Colleen Steen, Fairfax.
Very good. Albin?
Albert Gels, Town of St. Albans.
Thank you, Albin. Kirk?
Kirk Waite from Georgia.
Thank you, Kirk. Peter?
Peter Zamore, South Hero, and then Banana Belt.
Okay. Vincent? Thank you, Andy. We have Bob.
Bob Bierman, the other member from South Hero.
Great. Thank you. Christine Porcara.
Christine Porcaro. I'm with the Healthy Roots Collaborative.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Dea.
Dea Dublin, staff.
Great. Thanks. Dean.
Dean Pierce, staff.
All right. And Lori?
Lori Rupel, I live in Fletcher.
All right. Let me scan. I got Marietta.
Marietta Schulten, St. Albans Town. It's white and
Bakersfield. Bill Irwin, the current chair. Let me make sure, besides Catherine, if I've got everyone, and Dr. Rakeley, I think I do have everyone.
Sarah had Fairfax.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And so we'll leave it to Catherine for last.
Hi, I'm Catherine Dmetrich, staff.
Great. And I'll introduce Dr. Rakeley. So is there anyone that I missed? Anyone? I think I got it. Good. All right. Are there any public comments? All right, not hearing any. It just makes me wonder. We don't really get a lot of people from the public joining us. We actually rarely do. It's typically people that we've invited, and obviously all who we've invited are here. So we'll move. We're very excited to have you back. The last discussion was really wonderful, and looking forward to your presentation this evening of donut economics and other items.
Fantastic. Thank you. Are you ready?
I think we are ready. Yes.
Ready.
All right. Well, we'll hop into it. I'm amazed at how quickly 2 months go past. So it's a pleasure to be with you. Let's make the most of our time. I don't want to eat into it because I know everybody's super busy and you have your business to conduct. So I'm just going to go swiftly into this presentation mode to share it with you as we go. So here we are. It's today. And I just love the work. I love the work around climate and social justice in the built environment. So it's always a running theme, and I think that it's in a very appropriate theme, working with your good selves as well. So just a reminder of our group contract in terms of us setting this out under the guidelines of civil discourse. Always be honest, keep our discussion productive, participate, listen actively. Your participation might be active listening, it might be active talking. We'll make sure we can keep a balance. Absolutely essential as an educational experience that we're going to keep an open mind. We're always going to discuss perhaps things that you haven't heard before, maybe things that you don't understand or agree with. So that's vital. We'll take responsibility for what it is that we say, and importantly, give the benefit of the doubt to our colleagues if in fact they may say or do things that we think may not land in the right way, or maybe even sometimes be off the mark or inappropriate. So let's respect that we all have really good intentions being here. Don't be a bystander and just on the sidelines looking in. Engage, and let's also determine what are some of those options for action that we can take forward through what we're going to be going through together today. Is everyone happy with our group contract around civil discourse?
Yeah, and this is Bill. I would say these would be great for us to keep in mind for every meeting that we ever have. It's really a collective of really valuable reminders for us in community service.
Yeah, thank you so much for that appreciation, Bill, really. So in terms of our agenda, this is what we have, and you've seen it, so I don't need to go through it again, but we'll look at the question that I left you with the last time, where what does ethical performance mean for you? What's your vision of the organization of the commission and of the community in the future? We'll spend some time going through donut economics. If you haven't heard, has anybody heard of donut economics before? Ish. Okay, so it's a little bit of a new concept. That's good. I love that. And then we'll have some time just to discuss what's your response to Vermont's housing crisis. Catherine shared some documentation with me. I think it's going to be a really, really important piece for us, particularly as we're spending our time together throughout the next few months. My focus is very much on housing. Tomorrow night, we're actually launching our first Vermont Racial Justice Housing Jam working group. And we're looking at how we can, in particular, increase racial equity inside of Vermont housing. That's just one slice of it, right? But we know that there are certainly equity issues around housing for other groups as well. So I would love to have a very pointed conversation with all of you this evening about how you feel you're positioned in that context and what your response is. And Catherine's also shared the Declaration of Inclusion and the statement that you ratified, I do believe, at your last meeting. So again, let's have a quick conversation about what good can it do? What does it mean? How do you operationalize it, right? And make it real rather than just a piece of paper or digital and something or other that's been signed as we go. So that's our agenda. I also just wanted to stimulate your dendrites and your brains, just to remind you of the VUCA that we went through the last time as well, because the world hasn't stopped, right? We're still looking at volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It would be curious as we have our discussion tonight, if you can, in an appropriate way, just sort of share where this is playing itself out in some of the decisions that you're having to make, some of the challenges that you're being confronted with as well. So that's just a little holder there. So let's go. This was one of the, as I said, this is where we left off the last time we were together 2 months ago. And I'm gonna be quiet and I'll yield the floor so that we can have a collective discussion about, what does ethical performance mean for all of you? How can you elevate this performance in your work? Where's the vision of where you are now, and what does the future look like? So have you had any considerations around specific, and when I'm talking about ethics, I'm not just talking about compliance. I'm not talking about just compliance with regulation. There's an element of, where's the moral imperative in all that you're doing? And how can you make sure that that's being satisfied?
So as leader of the tribe here, I'll try to start some conversation I feel like that we have a really important role at the Northwest Regional Planning Commission to try to exemplify the best ethical perspectives throughout all of our work and all of our writing, and hope that that trickles down, although I hate to use that phrase, to the municipalities that we serve and then the leaders in those municipalities. But I fear that the last few years have really corroded a lot of our ethics. I find that it's often quite disturbing to hear, even in my own town, something very reactionary that seems to have a very protective perspective that isn't helping in the causes that are really valuable to human existence. And it happens daily, but it seems to be a little bit more acute than it used to be because of the stresses we've been under.
Thank you, Bill, for kicking off as leader of the tribe. Is there a specific sort of example that you can throw out? Because this is about relationships, right? It's about communication and relationships.
I'll give you one really exactly in our wheelhouse here. We have this old school in town that, in my mind, is a treasure because it's beautiful, it's symbolic of the town, and so many people went through there to get their education. But it's also become this kind of lightning rod of, yes, let's rebuild it, let's remake it, let's revitalize it, reuse it, to no, I don't want to invest any more in this thing anymore, anytime again. And there was this one thought that one of the entities that is in a butter to it, that has some very important land that could be used in the revitalization of this school, the first remarks that came out were, no, we're not going to allow that because they're going to do this. And I was very sad to hear that. And I said, there's so much good that can come from this. And after a while, it was clear that what I saw in my friends and neighbors, which was immediate agreement with that first comment of protectionism, to now they were starting to all think, yes, there are broader perspectives associated with the redevelopment of this school where it can have really great values to this community. And the conversation opened up and it became much better. But I fear that there are people who are highly respected that have these attitudes that are so, sometimes I've used this term protectionist twice already now, to limit something that could be really not just stimulating and satisfying to do, but even just to talk about it.
And what was this, Bill, that the person took objection to?
Okay, so it's the sewage treatment system for the building. There's not enough space on the land that they own that they would likely come to this other entity, which is the fire department in the town, and who has land immediately available for an actual space for the sewage treatment system, to put it there on their land that'll go otherwise unused, but could be tremendous to actually letting this giant building that could serve the community, elderly populations that don't have good housing, and school children that could probably get childcare from the elderly that are there.
Right.
All we have to do is give them permission to put their septic tanks and leach field on our property, which will never be used for anything but grass.
Great example.
And Bill, how's that from your perspective? Where do the ethics tie in there?
Yeah, I think the ethics tie into I've used that term protectionism multiple times here, where people feel like something's being taken from them personally, when it is actually something that is part of the community, and that there needs to be an effort that I believe is specifically not just in the background, but somebody has to really put it forth to happen, to focus on what are those broader community interests and how do they fit into this project. Can we actually see as a community the benefits and not just get wrapped around how one particular entity might be, even in a minor way, disturbed by it.
Yeah, that's great. If I can just hop in, because I'll reference us back to VUCA, right? That individual saying, nope, not going to have it, don't want any sewage or, leach fields here. That defensiveness that you talk about and the protectionism is the reaction to the VUCA. That's when people shut down. And so the ethical consideration is here, good question, Kirk, down to Bill. It's really about that, as you say, Bill, it's the community development piece. It's the civic duty that we have. It is helping others who are in need. I mean, it's simple, it's basic, right? That's where the ethics, and what do we put first? The needs of that individual, or do we have a community spirit? And so the work that we do is understanding the needs of those parties. I mean, that's diversity and inclusion, really. And it's not to make somebody wrong for having a particular perspective. There may be completely good and valid reasons for the no, but we don't know unless we have the discussion. And we don't know unless we can engage in that civil discourse and unpack where the tensions are, so that we can find the best possible outcome for everybody, right? And this work is always going to be a fine balance between the needs of the individual and the needs of the collective, right? So thank you for that. Any other thoughts around?
I have a
yes.
thought.
Yeah, sure.
I think in my world anyway, and there's a lack of respect. Even though it's a statement or a thought or an idea that doesn't side with yours or goes on your against your grain, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to shut them down and get angry with them.
Right.
We've lost a great deal of respect,
and
it's worse as the older to the younger. So sliding reverse scale.
Thank you for that, because I think that is the role that you all have sitting on this commission as leaders inside of the community, and how you respond as well to some of those instances, so that we can be as diplomatic as possible, and we can really hear and appreciate those different perspectives and integrate that into the decisions that you're making, right? Because we don't have all the information. And even if we don't agree with somebody, they might actually have a nugget of a piece of information that we need to make that decision. But you're absolutely right. There's much tension between generations, as there are between, all kinds of other aspects of human difference that are out there. And I love the intergenerational piece that Bill also referenced in terms of the possibility of having, daycare for small people and elder people together. How can we actually plan, not just in the buildings that you're responsible for, the bricks and mortar, but how do you actually build the communities and the relationships within and around these bricks and mortar, the bricks and mortar, which is what makes anything quite special. Okay, so let's go into, what else do we got here? What about the future? Well, okay, we have a little bit of a sense of where it could be now. Where do you want to take this for the future? What do you want to be able to create inside of your community that will make it materially and palpably different from how it is today in a way that's to the good. Yeah, sure, Sarah.
So I think just to jump back from it to some of the ethical principles, American Institute of Certified Planners has aspirational principles that are also recommended for planning boards. And one of them is, I think it's principle 3 about people who participate in the planning process shall work to achieve economic, social, and racial equity. So I think that's just a great reference tool to look at in terms of how do you aspire to these principles in the work that you do. But I think to sort of try and tie together some of what various people are hearing and saying is to be able to restore that civil discourse to our communities and be able to have collective community conversations. So oftentimes we have tokenism in terms of public input, where we have the public hearing and we put out the notice and we call it good. We've involved the public, and you don't get people out and participating that way. So more meaningful, fully engaged, I think community involvement in our decision-making process is a great goal to have, and to move up that, or move down the ladder, move up or down the ladder of Arnstein's sort of involvement and move away from tokenism.
Yeah, brilliant. So there's probably, thank you for that, Sarah. Like, and spend the time to really think about what's your protocol for that engagement right now, and how do you, what can you do as we move 3 months, 6 months, 12 months from here to be able to see that increase in engagement, qualitatively and quantitatively, an increase in engagement. That's a challenge, huh? I also love what Sarah references. Many of you may be parts of professional bodies, and those codes of conduct are there for a reason, right? And so those are also really good guiding principles to make sure that you're integrating into what you're doing. Anybody else have a vision? Sarah wants to see more substantial and meaningful community engagement. Yeah, sure, Alvin.
A couple of days ago on NPR, there was a group of 3 or 4 women professors of women's history. And they came up with a concept that it's the first time I've heard the term, but and I like it. It's called Egalitarian Democracy. And they went on to explain how we're all equal, and to work towards that, going back to other people's comments on respect and making sure that, if you will, the pie is equitably split among all people.
We're going to look at a donut soon, so just bear that in mind when we get to the donut. What you're thinking
Well, I'm
about
in the donut hole now with Medicare.
Right. So egalitarian democracy, is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really nice, right? Because it immediately flips me back to, and I've been doing a lot of work on racial equity recently, just because I've been asked to, and it's even a learning curve for me. But just going back through so much of the history of separate but equal, it's like separate but equal. That's not really a thing. That's not really equal, is it? But when you begin to embed something like egalitarian democracy, that makes what we're searching for justice for anybody more possible, right?
That's what I think.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Okay. Anybody else? Peter, you look a little expectant over there.
Sure, I could say something. I'm thinking of the vision more in substantive terms than process-wise. And to me, Vermont is a real challenge economically, given how flat our population curve is and how old the average age is. And we really need to take measures to improve, get more youth more diversity and grow the population in a way that'll stimulate both the economic and social sustainability of Vermont. And I certainly agree with you that housing is an important part of that, because we're way out of whack in terms of the ratio of costs and income in Vermont relative to other states around the country. And it seems to me that one way to address that is to get more young people here who can help stimulate the economy rather than old folks like me who don't contribute much.
Yeah. No, that's not that. No, we don't go that far. It's really interesting. I was doing some research. I was looking at the census data of Vermont from 1920, and then like what's the population most recently. In 100 years, our population hasn't even doubled. And I think those people are still here, and you might be one of them, Peter. You know, I mean, really, we are so stagnant.
Well, maybe some of us want to be that way.
Well, no, and that's absolutely fine. You know, I mean, I say that somewhat tongue in cheek. So
I've been farming for 50 years on my own, and I'm 75, been doing this all my life. I'm one of 100 of descendants that was farming. I'm the only one left.
Yeah, no, and bless you, because that is, you know, that's as we would say, those are very good innings indeed. So I don't mean to cause offense to your tenure in Vermont at all, because I think that's back to the diversity piece of where we are intergenerationally, right? And the need that we have for some element of influx, right? But not to the denigration of who's been here. And I think that's one of the challenges with this work, particularly around diversity and inclusion. And when we're talking about transformation, a lot of times people assume that when we're talking about innovating or doing new things, that we're saying that everything that existed before, we need to get rid of, right? That's not what the narrative should be. Yeah, I get very concerned when I see people destroying the past because they don't agree with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a real thing. So I completely want to honor that, and as we go through, so we need to find the good in all of those things as we have them.
Some of these things that happened historically, they shouldn't be wiped out. They're lessons as opposed to anything else.
Absolutely.
Either do it over or don't do it again.
Indeed. I was having a conversation. I'm going to digress just slightly because this is innovation, as I love to do it as well. I have a dear friend who is sitting on the board of a school, and they're having this big discussion about the name of the school, and it needs to be changed because of, you know, whoever came before who isn't in favor today, and they want to change it to something new. And I said, so why can't, whoever said that a school just has to have one name? Why does it have to be one or the other? Like, name, give it two names and use that as a history lesson. But don't wipe people out. That's not helpful. So good points. All right, let me go back into where we are. So I'm going to talk about donut economics. And we did a little bit of a piece on this. I guess it was a week ago on Monday. I find it really fascinating because it's a concept that has been developed by Kate Raworth, as you see there. She's an economist from England. And so she's really, it's 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist. And the whole notion that Kate is bringing forth with the donut is that we have to figure out how to live in balance, right? We have so many of our systems that have been so overtaxed. And when we talk about overtaxed systems, this is where she has here saying that we've overshot the mark. So this is the donut here, right? The donut is here, the safe and just space for humanity. And it is defined as a regenerative and distributive economy. So the notion is we want to have our societies, we want to have our operations existing safely within this healthy donut here. Now, here's your social foundation, right? The ring on the inside. And these are all the key elements of societies that Kate's looking at. right? So for yourselves, you probably have something around the housing, around energy, water, health, you probably do everything in the donut. So part of that ethical responsibility is to see, okay, are there any areas inside of here, any areas in our social foundation where there's a shortfall? We can honestly say that this is a shortfall, right? We're in crisis. We can honestly say that's from the social foundation point of view. On the outer parts of the ring, that's our ecological ceiling. So climate change, ozone layer depletion, air pollution, biodiversity loss, land conversion, freshwater withdrawals, nitrogen and phosphorus loading, chemical pollution. You've got to be thinking about ocean acidification. There are things out here you've also got to think about. So you got to think about, okay, well, where have we overshot the ecological mark that is throwing the world that we're living in an imbalance and actually probably having health implications for people, or, it could be all sorts of things. So donut economics is a really, really interesting way of presenting a 21st century model of economics that says we can't constantly be thinking about just GDP all the time, continual growth. We need to just pause for a moment, understand that there are many things that we have overshot the mark on ecologically, so many things that we've undershot the mark on in terms of social foundation. That has thrown us into an imbalance. We need to think about the well-being of people. We need to prioritize that as we're moving through the 21st century. And we need to ensure that any actions that we're engaged in are actions that are going to enable the individuals and the communities to thrive, right? But we're not thriving if we're overshooting or falling short in some of these areas. So that's the whole notion of donut economics. As I did before, I can put a PDF together and send this over to everybody. There's a really good video. There's a TED Talk that Kate's done, which gives I think it's about 15 minutes or so, but it's really well worth you listening to and figuring out, okay, how do we apply this in the work that we're doing? How do you apply it with your governance? How do you apply it with the data that you're collecting, the decisions that you're making? So I just wanted to share that with you. And then just, where do you see yourselves in the donut? Where is there room for activity? We've talked about housing. Anything else inside social foundation? We talked a bit about political voice as well, right, Sarah?
Income and work also.
Yeah, so what role can you play in elevating that and getting it into the donut? You may not have an answer immediately.
I guess I see two things here in this model, which I love. The first off, I think we're shortfall on every one of the social foundations. I don't think I can pick out one that we're on the right mark. The other piece is I'm going to call it a European-based economic model of the only way we can do anything is through growth. Is we need exponential growth in spending in order to make our financial system that at least the US is built around. And because of that spirals us to have to be consumers all the time and bigger consumers, otherwise our system breaks. And when you talk about Vermont's population being stable, it doesn't work because you have to have growth. You can't, and it really is an exponential growth. You can't even have just a straight line growth to make our models work. And applying this mix hopefully can get us to think about things much larger than just economics, which drives more people, which drives higher income, and higher income and more people to pay for the things for the people that are trying to do the social foundation. We're in a spiral in the wrong direction that our economic model says we have to go.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Well, to Bob's point, first thing that comes to my mind is the reaction of the majority are going to be against giving up all the toys that people, with consumerism demands that we buy, or we are enticed to buy to keep the economy going and growing. And if you try to put a brake on that, which I agree with, the problem is that people get angry and then you get towards this crazy revolutionary yak. Not that the people are going to raise arms, but you get to a point where it's almost impossible to move a community because of the reaction. And somehow or other, we have to start, I don't know what the right word is, but an earlier thought in our evolutionary thinking. And going back to the linking elderly people with younger people, two things. My grandmother was born in the 1860s, and she told me all the stories. And when I went to her hometown in Wales, they took me all around, showed me where she probably lived and all that. But also I was on the State Board of Education, and we toured Winooski School District. And this was back in the 90s. And they had a program called Grandmothers and Grandfathers. And it was people who were retired who had the time to devote to the school. And every class had a grandmother or a grandfather. And those parents worked with children, listening to their reading, helping them when they stumbled over a pronunciation, things like that. But when they went to the reading aspect, the whole school went to a reading mode. You could hear a pin drop except for the grandmother and the child's voice. It was absolutely phenomenal. But then when you're talking to the parents, the grandparents, what they gained out of it and so forth, but then these little kids coming up and hugging their grandmother or grandfather, you had that conversion of ideas where when I was a child, we did it this way. And the youngsters saying, well, no, now we do it this way. But it opens up, from my mind as a child, imagination.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's just, I love that. And that this theme of the intergenerational exchange is golden.
Yes.
It's really golden. We were having a little bit of a chat just this past week about our different modes of communication. And I said, I want to write a book. I want young people to know that we used to have carrier pigeons, I want them to understand that you could take a bird and you can send it thousands of miles over the ocean to carry a message. Not just an instant message on a piece of technology like that, because that's mind-boggling for some people. They don't even know that that's possible. We did amazing things in the past that people don't know that are possible, that actually could come into use, that would put us back into this donut. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, great stuff.
There was a similar story where a child put a note in a bottle and it landed up across the Atlantic. And then the parents and the child called back, and the excitement on both sides of the pond was phenomenal.
It's so good, right? I love that. We were talking about the messages in the bottle, the carrier pigeons, the Morse code, all sorts of wonderful things. But to be imaginative is really important, right? To keep that finger on that pulse. And some of that means pulling back into the past, as we were saying, in order to get us to a better foundation for the future. So this whole notion of eternal, perpetual growth, it comes under question with donut economics, and it is more about thriving and looking at well-being. And so there's research that's being done over at UVM, and it is taking the notion of looking at genuine progress indicators instead of just GDP, right? Like, what are going to be the genuine progress indicators that are going to tell us how close we are of being inside of a balanced and well-being system. So there's more to come, but I just wanted to introduce this notion to all of you this evening, and we can take it a little bit further. I realize in the PowerPoint presentation, I should include the hour-long webinar that we did last week for you if you wanted to sit and watch that, because it's more thorough as we're going through, and you'll get the expert from UVM as well.
Off of that,
yes.
I just wanted to say how much I like this diagram too, because when people ask me what do the regional planning commissions do for economic development, my answer is typically that we do all of the work that creates the conditions for economic success. So we don't work to attract the companies here, but we do the work that makes them want to come. And so that to me is shown in this diagram, because we do the work in housing and energy and water and food and income, and we do the work in those areas, the social foundation. But I also know that our biggest programs that the state and others have wanted us to do in recent years, which is the grants and aid program for town road improvements for water quality and resilience, and the new clean water service provider, those are the biggest money ticket items that we've worked on in recent years. And those are all correcting problems on the outside rather than building up the good on the inside. So those are the things that strike me about looking at this model.
Excellent. Thank you. Superb. Well, I know I've just got a few more minutes with you. So to honor that as we go through, this is just, again, a really good frame for a low carbon regenerative economy. So this piece, has anybody seen this? You know, the climate justice playbook, familiar to anybody? Okay. So again, when we're looking at donut economics, as Kate was saying, can I go back one? Let me go back. It is about having a regenerative economy, right? So here, we're going from extractive and exploitative models to equitable and regenerative. And what does that mean? You know, what do we need to have culturally in terms of how we organize ourselves? So it says here, it's talking about a mindset shift. I love that it's a mindset shift, right? I've been working in diversity for many, many years. And when we first started Abundant Sun in 2003, the first learning event we put on in 2005 was called Diversity Mindset, because we wanted people to understand that this isn't just about compliance with equal opportunities legislation and being anti-discrimination towards people, but like we've got to shift our mindset around how we respect the resources that have been given to us, whether they're economic, human, or environmental. Right. And I love that donut economics has come out, because I know that that's been the very foundation of our thinking as an organization from the day of our incorporation. Right. We wanted people to bring all these elements together. So an extractive and exploitive system is rooted in old power models, perpetuating a cycle of harm and injustice. Now, but remember what I said earlier. It doesn't mean to say that everything that's in the sort of brownie thing on the left-hand side is all bad, right? You've got here in terms of like command and control, like, okay, but sometimes you need command and control, right? I'm a control freak. I'm not gonna, and I know there are moments where that's good. Sometimes you need to tick boxes. Sometimes you need linear deadlines and KPI-driven, indicators. And so I don't want you to look at I don't want you to do this as a good or bad thing, right? But where do we find the balance? And how do we have the powers of discernment to know when we go one direction or another? So one size fits all. I don't think there's anything that's any one size fits all. So maybe that's something. And then it has here white supremacist tendencies. Now that's completely loaded. I'm not even going to work with that one tonight. Maybe we can do that one a little bit later. But let me just draw, because again, we don't have a huge amount of time, but to equitable and regenerative. So it's in new power models, creating sustained social and environmental well-being. And these are the things that this consists of, right? Having a consciously anti-racist approach. Again, I'm happy to have a more pointed conversation with all of you, because I think in our communities, people don't understand what this is, and it's creating more divisiveness and just mess. So I think that's probably warranting a session maybe two months from now. But when we're talking about equitable and regenerative, it's diverse, intersectional, culturally aware decision-making. It's multidimensional and intersectional. So it's this and that, not either or, so that's where, when you can deal with VUCA, you can do the this and that. If you're going to freak out with VUCA, then you're going to be defensive and protection and protectionary. So here's where we're talking about having greater political engagement, having greater community engagement, where if we've got an equitable and regenerative system, then it's centered and centered in and informed by communities and people most impacted. So we need to make sure that as you're doing your work now, and we're talking about ethics and we're talking about justice, that we find effective ways to get that level of engagement. We have a system of awareness and accountability for the negative impacts of what we're seeing. As we're saying, a system of accountability for the seepage of sewage in a building, that's a negative impact. How are we going to stay focused on learning and making progress? But again, progress not to the detriment of forgetting about the past. We're not going to do that. And then again, having a nonlinear approach so that, and it says right here, and this is your VUCA, you got to get comfortable with things that are uncertain, and you have to be patient enough for things to gradually change over time. Deep listening and collaboration, contextual, knowing what the perspective, that perspective matters. So these are elements of a regenerative economy, society that's going to actually help us stay inside or get into the donut. So that's it, really. That's just always what we're looking at in terms of our direction of travel and what's important by way of our values. These are just some references for you. Again, I'll put in an extra reference for you, which is something from our own work here inside of Abundant Sun that I think is really a good piece. That's the link to the climate justice playbook that I just went through. And then this is an article that was just in VT Digger last week around the roots and the way out of Vermont's housing crisis that will also be interesting for you to read as you go through. So thank you, everybody. See you again soon. That's me done. I'm about 2 minutes over, but I hope that's, again, enough food for thought for you. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of months' time.
Take care.
All right.
Great.
Take it easy.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
Dr. Brinkley.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, that's a lot to recover from. I definitely would like to see those again. I would like to especially see that last slide a second time to get a better sense of it. And maybe not feel so depressed about it. I feel like sometimes it's really hard to have, for lack of a better term, progressive thoughts these days. And but those are what suit me the best. So thanks for participating in that, and I hope that it helps you as much as it helps me to understand some of the challenges we have, as well as some of the tools we can use. I did, however, skip by a part of our agenda, and Andy reminded me of that. I believe it was Andy in the chat. Yeah, it is Andy. And that's the minutes of the March 2022 meeting. I did not ask if there were any comments, questions, or a motion relative to the minutes of last month's meeting. So Andy, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, right at the very end of the minutes, it'd be on page 6, line 25. Although I'm sure South Hero would be happy to have me as a resident. I'm actually from North Hero.
Shame.
Okay, so whoever's taking minutes of that, or for tonight, we could get that changed. And then are there any other additions, revisions for the minutes? All right, and could we have a motion with that one change to the minutes?
I'll make that motion to accept the minutes as altered or amended.
Very good, thanks.
Second.
Thank you, Andy. All right, any further discussion of the minutes? Not hearing or seeing any hands. All those in favor of approving the March minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And are there any abstentions? I see
I
Colleen.
wasn't there.
Thank you, Colleen, for the abstention. So the minutes pass. We will move on to the next item of our agenda, which is the commission reports. And we'll start with finance operations. I don't see Harold on the call. Maybe Catherine, you would take us through those for the month, or?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Harold had a meeting conflict tonight, so he couldn't make it. But I will note that it is 3/4 of the way through the year, and we are in decent shape in most areas. We have a couple of trouble spots Amy, Bethany, and I were reviewing today in terms of being ahead of ourselves on a couple of contracts, but we're going to work to correct those before the end of the year. All in all, I think we're in good shape and we would expect to be at this time of the fiscal year.
Very good, thank you. Are there any questions or comments about the profit and loss budget versus actual, or the balance sheet? All right, I don't see any here. We need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Or am I doing this as the way we do it at the fire station? We don't need approval of these financial statements. I've forgotten.
We usually don't, but if you want
Okay.
to, it's up to you. It's up to all
We
of
do
you.
it. We do it at the fire department every month. So I'm sorry, I the two organizations mixed up here. Since we're not required to do so, I'm not going to break the mold here. We'll move on then to our next committee, and that would be let me get to the top here. Personnel, Lori.
We did not meet, but I have a feeling before we know it, we're going to be into hopefully spring and summer and staff reviews and all that cycle that we'll be hitting in a little bit.
The year goes fast.
Yep.
Yes. All right. And then I have executive committee. We also did not meet. We will be meeting in May, however. Bob, you want to report for project review?
Sure. Project review did meet. We talked about the airport changes. We talked about that a little bit last month also, but we found the specifics in their application were not a substantial regional impact, and they were in conformance with the regional plan. Though I guess our discussion is that we'd still like to have a discussion either at the committee or actually at the full board about the long range plan for the airport to understand what's going there completely. The second one we talked about is expansion of the mini storage on Franklin Park West. One of the questions we came up with there is it is kind of on the edge of some potential stormwater impacts. So we want to understand a little bit more about that. And the other piece we discussed, though we've all talked about over years, is again, this is an activity in an area that doesn't have sidewalks, even though our plan says if you're going to be doing something, you need to have a sidewalk. So we had some discussions about that and just keep it in the background. The next one, the solar project in Georgia. This was the kind of the final application, final review. This is an expansion of an existing solar project. No substantial regional impact, and again, it conforms with our regional plan. The purpose energy activity that we're kind of sitting on the edge for that one, waiting for some more inputs. So that's kind of an ongoing activity we've been talking about for a while. So there was really nothing new there. And the staff had a project that they dealt with, which was a result of an area that had an Act 250 permit originally for the subdivision. So if any house within that subdivision does any activity, they got to go through Act 250. So it's really a minor, from our standpoint, it's really minor. That. Any questions about any of the details of those projects, concerns?
Just curious, I know that the airport question about a master plan was posed some time ago. Did we hear back from them that they were willing to do that?
I was waiting for Catherine to pop in. I think we heard it. We heard them willing to do that, but I don't think we've had a chance to really schedule anything yet. So.
No, we were looking at potentially scheduling them for next month. Yes, next month, looking at my ahead schedule.
And that would be for the full commission, or okay, I see you nodding your head.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way to accomplish it, because I feel like it's not just the project review would like to hear it, but I think it would be good for everyone, since it has a substantial regional impact as an entity in the region.
Yeah, and we did that with the hospital when they had their master plan, and it's definitely a similar scale and scope of development and impact.
Sounds very exciting and very promising. I'd just like to be more aware of what it all entails.
Well, and part of this master plan, it's not just the airport itself, it's kind of what's going on around them too as a result of what they're doing. So it's a little bit more complicated than just the hospital covering their own properties.
So if I read the project review report in the package on page, I think 15, if you all want to look at it, no action is necessary today. All right. If there's no other questions for project review, we'll go to Transportation Advisory Committee. And I know, again, Harold's not here. I'm not sure if Bethany, you might have something, or someone else.
Yeah, I can start. If there's any other TAC members, they can fill in. But the TAC did meet this month. They're working through their annual transportation project prioritization and selection process. And this year they're focusing on state highway bridges and town highway bridges that are greater than 20 feet in length. They're going to continue that into May, and at the May board meeting, you will see the results of their work, and you'll do an endorsement of the work that they've done. The one thing I did not include in your packet that I should have is that at the TAC meeting, Colleen has announced that she is stepping down from TAC. And so the TAC members were, voiced their appreciation for her long service. And she's been a great advocate both to Fairfax, but the region as a whole. And I went through the minutes, Colleen, and I found that your first TAC meeting was May 8th, 2003. So 19 solid years of service for the committee. So thank you again. And I apologize, I didn't put that in the report.
Thank you so much, Colleen. That's wonderful. Wow.
Oh, and you didn't, and we need to add that we have a great replacement too.
Oh yeah.
Our road foreman, Tim Germain, is taking my place.
Great.
So Colleen continues to be a great committee member because she found her replacement when she decided to step down.
Excellent.
I'm looking for more replacements.
Yeah. Oh, just
no, I'm shaking my head no, Colleen.
Added note, just to keep you updated, step back topic before, they are in the process of surveying along Route 78 for that expansion of the water sewer line to the Highgate Airport.
Okay. Yeah, we knew there'd be many ramifications of that, why we wanted to bring it to the full commission. All right, we'll go then to the Energy and Climate Committee. Bob.
So we had our kickoff of the new revitalized Energy and Climate Committee, which took us a while to find a date, but we got it down now. So we did a review of the Global Warming Solutions Act and Vermont Climate Action Plan to kind of set the base for what we're doing. And Marlena has been doing tons of things. If you go through the staff report, she's been doing a great job of pulling in pieces for us to all work on and review. The biggest being the window inserts project, which I hear is overwhelmingly in demand. So looking forward to making that work. Anything else I should add from that, Catherine?
Just a thank you to yourself. Bob stepped in to facilitate the meeting that I was planning to facilitate when I didn't have the energy. So thank you, Bob.
And actually, Bill, my hesitation when you called on me, it's like, we don't have a chair for that committee, so I don't know why I'm talking anyway.
I know, we just kind of assumed you were from previously, but I guess that would be an action item for the next meeting, is to establish some positions there. All right. Yeah, it was a good meeting, and really do appreciate how you stepped in to cover that, Bob. All right, so Elizabeth, on the Brownfields Committee?
Elizabeth couldn't make it tonight.
Okay, I thought she was on, but I guess I'm wrong. Anyone have any report from there other than what's in the packet? All right. And then we've got the Vermont Economic Progress Council. Alvin?
The council's meeting tomorrow, and there's no applications from this area.
Thank you, Alvin. Green Mountain Transit, Bob or Catherine?
Bob, I honestly don't remember the meeting. I was still pretty sick when I listened to that meeting.
Yeah, I think you were on and off about 3 times. I didn't pull out those minutes from that meeting. There was a lot. We covered a lot of things, but most of it was executive session, so I can't.
No, I remember the root cuts are not happening.
Yeah, that is the biggest thing. The route cuts are not happening. The legislature is still struggling with their transportation budget, but looks like we're going to be able to figure out a way to squeeze around what we have with the special federal dollars that coming through. So
Mazda was on the radio. Mazda was on the radio the other day, and he was talking about they had $875 million. You can't find enough money within that to help you?
Well, I actually got to meet with Senator Mazda this week.
It covers your area.
I mean, part of the problem is where to spend those special dollars and how much extra dollars should be going to standard things, or if it shall be going for unique activities. And part of its match capabilities to pull down some of those dollars. So anyway, so some of those special dollars, I think by the time the Senate versus the House bill gets settled, there will be money figured out. It's my guess.
One would hope so.
All right, any other questions for Green Mountain Transit with a little bleed over into other transportation area items? All right. And I didn't see Lynn. Is there anyone that would like to speak
I'm
to?
here. I'm
sorry,
here,
Lynn.
Bill, but that's okay. But we didn't meet, but Christine is here, so she may have something to add.
Well, that's right. Yes, thanks.
Over the past month, we received funding from Vermonters Feeding Vermonters. And this was a new opportunity for the Healthy Roots Collaborative because it allows us to purchase local produce to support 2 programs. One of them being migrant household food boxes that we do in partnership with Northwest Family Foods and Bridges to Health. And then a new initiative with the Richford Notch, we're creating a healthcare CSA. So we're going to be partnering with a local farm. We'll purchase 10 CSAs that will go to 10 individuals and households that have been identified as food insecure. So it's a great program because it's addressing food access, but also allowing us to pay farmers for the food as well. And for this initiative, we're prioritizing farms that have allowed us to glean on their farms too. So we'll still be gleaning from them, but also being able to give them some funds for that as well. And then another really exciting opportunity was Healthy Roots was given a grant through the Dairy Business Innovation Center. And that's allowing us to work with 3 value-added dairy farmers alongside a technical assistance provider, Blair Johnson, who works specifically in cheese, butter, and bottled milk. And so Healthy Roots will be providing technical assistance for sales and marketing. Blair will be working with them on, recipe development, SOPs for their production facilities, and then also the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District also provided match for that grant. So they'll be working with those farmers as well to see if there's any conservation projects they could do on those farms. So a really exciting grant project, but also allowing us to work with dairy value added, which hasn't necessarily been in Healthy Roots wheelhouse before now.
Well, excellent report, Christine. Thank you so much. And it's just April. The growing season still to come. But I guess this is the time that you do most of your preparations.
And I should note that the Dairy Innovation Grant that Healthy Roots received is the company that they are in is quite remarkable. Our grant was in the company of some really well-known entities across the Northeast and receiving a grant. So it was real compliments to the work of Healthy Roots staff.
Oh, so it's regional, not just Vermont. Okay. Well, fantastic. Congratulations. We'll move then to the Northwest Vermont Regional Foundation. Kirk, anything to report from there?
No, nothing to report this month.
Thank you, sir. And then staff, where would we like to start today?
I can start in that I don't have a significant update beyond TAC, but if there's any questions about the transportation items in the packet, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Anything that you would add, Catherine?
Just note that, as you all know, we have a remarkable staff, and I'm not the only one who's been out with COVID this month. We have a few more people too. So everyone has stepped up and worked together. And if you're waiting for anything from any of us, thanks for your patience. But we really have an amazing group of people who stepped up and stepped in where it was needed. So compliments to everyone.
Great.
And Percy and Laura, you're right about personnel needing to meet, as well as finance and operation in the coming months. Getting ready for the next fiscal year, FY23, if you can believe it.
And Dea, anything you'd add?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome. And Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just say briefly that as the clean water service provider, some meaningful work that we've been doing lately includes more systems development for grants management and project development. We've also been commenting on some significant Department of Environmental Conservation policy documents. And the last thing I would mention is that we have signed, or we're just about to get the signed phase 3 agreement relating to QUISP work. The 2 basin councils have also each had their second meetings in the last month. And I will leave it at that.
Great. Thanks, Dean.
Oh, actually, I will use this as an opportunity to say that one of the things that both councils did was elect chairs and vice chairs, and the Lamoille Council selected as its chair your very own Sarah Hatt.
Congratulations, Sarah.
Well, thanks. Am I vice chair though? I thought.
Vice chair, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Oh,
No, we didn't promote you in your absence.
Well, you were vice chair, but the chair quit, so. Well, thanks to both of you and for the work there. And I just want to thank all the staff. It sounded like a really tough month. How's everybody doing? There's still some folks who are ill. Obviously, Catherine, you shared your challenges remaining, but everybody else seems to be okay.
We've got what, 2 or 3 folks now who are also sick, and one who's suspected, and then a couple others whose children have had it. So yeah, it's been quite a month of April.
I'm so sorry.
Everybody's doing pretty well though, and like I said, amazing group. Everybody's stepping up and helping out, and I suspect there'll be a lot of vacations planned for the months of June through August when people want to just need a break.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Well, thanks for all the committee reports. We'll move on to an action item for agenda item 7, which is the Transportation Advisory Committee rules of procedure, which are included in your packet. I don't know, Bethany, is there anything that you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, what I'll say is that it's been 7 years since the TAC has amended their rules of procedure. So just to remind you that because the TAC is advisory to the board, the full board needs to adopt any rules of procedure changes. So these edits, I did underlines for new items and strike throughs for things that are being deleted. The changes are in 2 areas. The first, and the main item, the reason for doing this is on page 16 of your packet, line 42, is moving the annual election of officers from October to June to be in line with all the other NRPC committees.
Okay.
So that's the main change. And then another change is on the next page, and it's lines 10 through 16, where I'm just cleaning up some processes for how meetings are posted in compliance with open meeting law. So those are the 2 things. The committee has started talking about some more substantial changes in the future, maybe about representation and quorum and things like that. But we just focused on, at least doing something right now, and then we might revisit it in the future.
So are there any questions or comments about the proposed changes to the Transportation Advisory Committee rules of procedure? All right. I'm looking at both of my lists and pictures here. I don't want to miss anybody that I'm sorry I missed earlier, both with Lynn and with Christine. So I see no hands up and I see no one here in the pictures. So we'll entertain a motion relative to the revised rules of procedure for TAC.
Move.
Okay, Richard
second.
has moved and Bob has seconded approval, I assume. Is there any further discussion on approving the revised rules of procedure for this date? All right, I see none. All in favor of the changes for actually dated April 14, 2022 of the Transportation Advisory Committee rules of procedure, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. And are there any abstentions? All right, so that passes. Thank you very much for that. And you have a sense of when you might come back with those other changes that you were thinking you might make? Or there's no schedule to that?
There's no schedule. One thought I had was after the full board has gone through the equity and ethical leadership work, that might spark some conversation at the TAC level, specifically about representation. So I would say we're probably, several months to a year out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bethany. All right, we are at agenda item 8, commissioner announcements. Are there any? Okay, I see no hands in the list. I see no hands or people coming off of mute for the pictures. I think we're good then with commissioner announcements. That leaves us one final item for the agenda tonight.
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion to adjourn by Alvin and a second by Richard. All in favor, please say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Great meeting. I appreciate the presentation tonight, the committee reports, and look forward to working with you over the course of the month in committee and back to the commission the end of May. You take care. Safe travels.
Good night.